The experts that best communicate their culture and their vision to their potential clients are those entrepreneurs that we remember. I'm Shelby Jo Long with the Expertise Podcast, and here we explore the stories of those entrepreneurs to inspire you to think about how you can monetize your expertise. Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the Expertise Podcast. I'm Shelby Jo Long, and I run the Expertise Project, where I help inspire you to think about your expertise in a different way, in a monetizable way, make a business out of it, and there's just lots of opportunities for that. I use this podcast to interview experts that have created businesses out of their expertise to help give some advice and a path for you to follow for that. In this week, I am interviewing members of the Strategic Advisor Board, and I'm a member of the Strategic Advisor Board. There's a group of 10 of us CEOs that are all together, and we all work together with our clients. We partner with them to help come up with custom solutions for them to grow their business and scale their business. And who I'm interviewing today, Michael Owens with Mako Consulting, is in the Strategic Advisor Board with me. So I'm excited to ask Michael about his past and to talk about the development of his consulting group and to get us to a place where we know a little bit about each other. I want to know more of his story and his background, and then we'll talk more about the Strategic Advisor Board at the end of the podcast. So Michael, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I'm excited that you're here.
Well, thank you, Shelby. I'm elated to be here and part of the group, and I just enjoy what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and it's a great honor. So I appreciate it. So,
well, thank you. It is so exciting, just at an exciting point to be able to that discovery phase, and it's going to be exciting to see where we go. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your business, your consulting business, and then we'll get into the Strategic Advisor Board. But if you can just get into your background first, that'd be great.
Well, like you alluded to, I have a consulting business that came about from my past, really being in the hospitality food service industry, and for many years, if I go back, I don't know, 30 plus years, I guess. But I haven't always been in the industry as an owner. The last 30 years, I've had partners in ownership of building several restaurants. But prior to that, I was in corporate. My first real job in the corporate industry was for Applebee's, and I opened up the very first Applebee's in the country.
Huh.
But prior to that, I was a sous chef, and had an apprenticeship and went to school, but for culinary and business. And I got the bug, and I said, you know what, I want to, kind of spread my wings a little bit and get out there and get more experience through different levels of the industry, and kind of help create my leadership skills and broaden up a little bit. So Applebee's was one of the first ones, one of my first jobs that led me into management and went into school. Then it was shortly after that I got the bug to be an entrepreneur. Okay, I always had that in me to be an entrepreneur. Even at a very early age, I was selling, paper subscriptions door to door,
Sure.
when I was 12 years old. So I had it early age, but I always liked to be very creative, and so that's why I was drawn to food, and I loved to cook and stuff like that. So, and so that need of creativity, helping people, making people satisfied, just kind of cultivated into something larger than what I thought I was seeking for. So after leaving the corporate world, I decided to make a decision to go out and try entrepreneurship. And even though it wasn't in the food industry, at the age of 24, I opened my first grocery store. And it was a small market, one meat cutter, two aisles of, checkout, and it was in a small city. And after about a year of working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day,
Oh, geez.
I, I thought I was going to have a heart attack at the age of 25. So I said, you know, I said, well, you know what? I remember, vividly going to the banker and trying to, convince him that this was a good idea, and here I was, had no, experience of business at that point other than in corporate, because they did teach me a lot, but I didn't have enough to make something like that go. Margins are low, a lot of theft. I mean, just long hours, whatever. But
Right.
it was crazy. Um, so I went back to the corporate world and extended my my life a little bit and and I wanted to make sure that I got the experience that I needed to make sure that I was going to, next time I had that bug to go out and do it on my own, that I was ready for it. And so that time came 1994, where I opened up my first restaurant, uh, and it was a brewery restaurant,
Awesome.
microbrewery, and
I
at
love
that,
breweries.
yeah. So and it's still open today, and I had that for probably 8 years, and I had some partners with that. Left that and went on and opened up several other restaurants, and for the next all the way up to 2012, I think it was. Uh, uh, so that kind of led me, and during that process, I've had so I've got I was very blessed to meet a lot of different people and through the industry, and it's amazing how small the world is when you go to Chicago to the restaurant
Sure.
shows and stuff like that, and how you meet up with them. But once you're in the industry, everybody's always seeking everybody's help. It's like a small community, but it's a large industry, and so it kind of got me the consulting bug a little bit, where I've helped out several restaurants in Neenah, Oklahoma, Arizona, in Topeka, where, in different facets of their phases of business. One was, is an Irish pub. He was already open, but he needed help on profitability. And it was just a few tweaks, all he needed, and those few tweaks really helped him um, kind of found his niche and his understanding about business and focus on where he needed to be profitable. So, um, that was my first consulting gig that I did, and that kind of gave me, the thought that I needed to continue to help people. So at
Sure.
that time, I continued to, uh, help people who came to me. I wasn't out seeking it, but it really uh, gave me some inspiration within to later on wanting to do something more, in that field as
Yeah.
consulting. So, um, but yeah, so that's where
Gosh,
I'm at right now. So
super interesting. And just that in that space, I had no idea that you had background as a chef, and then all of that. I think that's such a creative space to be in, and now to be in another creative space where we're finding these custom solutions and understanding problems. I think there's so many similarities in those two worlds. And I would guess that the need for consulting, or it's the need for somebody with your experience in that realm, like in the restaurant industry, especially post pandemic, where
yeah,
people are trying to figure out what's next and how do I cut costs and how do I fix things. I would imagine that would be a very lucrative space to be in.
Well, what my banker told me one time, he goes, if you can run a restaurant, you can run any business. And you're running, I mean, you're just the multiple tasks that you have and that different hats that you have to wear, especially as a single owner. If you don't have a support staff around you, if you don't have the necessary capital, and to make sure that you can be a true leader. A lot of times a true leader is bogged down by all those tasks, as we talk about in SAB, that can hurt you for that growth strategy, right?
Sure.
So, and it becomes, very daunting. I think it is for an owner in the restaurant business if he doesn't have that capital in place, if he doesn't have the right strategy in order to make sure that those costs are in line, the right people in line, the right branding is in place. I mean, all of it plays in and comes in to making sure that the consumer is more of a recurring, revenue stream,
Right.
because they have choices. They have choices and hundreds of choices to go anywhere they want to. So you have to be, always innovative, innovating yourself. In our industry, you have to make sure that you're turning that brand every 6 years, because people get stagnant,
Sure.
and they want to see that change, but they like to see consistency
Yep.
as well. So, but to make sure that an owner has the ability to do that, he has to make sure that he has that support, not only financially around him, but the right people and the right systems and processes.
Because it's hard to do it all on your own, and
well, yeah,
depending. When you try to do everything, you don't do any of it very well. So focus takes. They need that
yep,
outside help for sure.
absolutely, yeah. So I was going somewhere with that, but I lost track of thought.
And then I interrupted you.
No,
No, I love the industry. Is that where the focus of the consulting, the Mako consulting, is that are you working in the hospitality industry specifically, or are you multi-industry? Does it matter what the organization has? Because I would imagine that the pain points are similar across many industries, but there's the supply chain part of it, and there's the consumer habits part of it, and there's all of those things that play into the dynamic nature of the.
I think, across the industry, I mean, it's all about the same. I think online businesses are different than brick and mortar. Brick and mortar, you have a lot more challenges because you're dealing with, depending on the size of the business, you have, maybe a staff of 100 or 300, and then especially in the food business, you're when you're talking brick and mortar, you're talking about, pipes bursting, electricity going out,
Right.
Equipment issues, or, things that you have to be very resourceful and have a plan in place to make sure that there's no disruption in the business.
Right.
So, but I mean, there's a litany of things that on a P&L that any 2 or 3 items could take you down, uh, at any time in the course of a month or two, So it's very important to know your business and understand your processes and understand where your operational efficiencies are, and it's when you're talking about a low margin business, it's you got to make sure that you're targeted to the right customer. I've made that mistake before. I thought I was in the right market. I did my feasibility study. I made sure that my price point was right, but the target was like this, not like this.
Right.
So, if you're targeting real small and you thought your target was bigger, well, you make sure your footprint matches that target, because if the footprint's too big, then your expenses are overwhelming, and then it's going to be tough to make it.
So much to do with brand. I do so much work in the brand world, and that's everything. You don't think about, you think with the brand is that who are you and who do you speak to and how do you get that message to there? But then you don't think, for me, I don't think about like the supply chain that's on the other side of that. So I think that's a really, I think
Well,
it's a really useful perspective to have.
yeah, the supply chain right now, especially with the pandemic, everything is really broken.
Yeah,
It's broken. It's really putting just where I'm at. We have one distributor that paused 63% of their operations because of labor issues.
sure.
And so what happens is that, so where do those 63% operators go get their product from? So they have to go out there and look for another vendor, right? So what does that mean? That means that there's going to be a lot of pain on, or disruption on, that other distributor, because they're not going to be able to handle all that additional workload that's coming towards them.
Right.
So that disrupts the whole another section of the supply chain.
Sure.
Just like bottling. Right now they can't get resin for making bottles. Soda pop. So, right now Coca-Cola and those, they can't. About 150 of their SKUs are not being made because they can't get the bottles made. So that's why there's shortages. So, and not just that, the manufacturers that are trying to produce these products, even if they can produce the products or get the resin, they can't get anybody to pack the items or deliver the product. So, and really there's two sets of distribution out there. And those two, I don't know if you remember, but the beginning of the pandemic, the grocery stores were all empty, right?
Yeah.
Ordering toilet paper, whatever it was. Well, now it's the operators, and these big conglomerate distributors or distribution centers now are making sure that the grocery stores are taken care of, but are putting the burden on the operators now, the restaurants and other small or fast chain, what have you. So so it's the labor, it's the product shortage, it's distribution, it's manufacturing, it's all the way up, it's everything, getting the product, so it's a huge challenge. And so you have to learn how to pivot, right? You have to learn, and you have to understand your business model and how you're going to sustain what you have and make it better through a situation like this. I'll give you an example. Recently, I had to make a pivot on the business model where we lost, and this is a corporate, okay, and we were losing, after the pandemic, we lost about 60% of our revenue. And so
probably similar to other areas, but gosh, that's hard to, that's a lot of revenue to lose.
It's, when you're talking in the millions of dollars, we lost 60%. So I had to make a decision. To pivot the business model and use technology, had to be resourceful. And the hardest part of leadership is making a decision, right?
Absolutely.
Especially $100,000 decision,
Right.
And so when you go out there and you look for technology, and which I had to use in order to, help reduce expenses through labor, which is unfortunate, and then also how I deliver the product to the consumer, and which is also labor, driven.
Yeah.
And so, those decisions turned out to be positive. It took about 6 months took 2 months to stop the bleeding, and another 4 months to be a sustainable model and be in the profit again. So, it was, and then as the pandemic was being reversed and people were coming back, then the client wanted everything as normal before, so we couldn't reverse that model. We had to strategically plan ourselves in order to balance not losing a contract and also making sure that we give what the consumer wants, what the client wants, and what the corporation wants. So and that continues as we speak today. But it turned out to be a good decision, and it was, going through that process, you always question yourself, right?
Sure.
So but yeah, so I lost track of thought again, but
I I think all of that, I mean, we're talking about pivoting and the strategy and all that movement. I mean, I think those are the words that I think of immediately when I think of the strategic advisor board and
right.
and how we work with clients, because that's, and particularly in the post-pandemic world, when businesses have had to shift significantly, they have had to shift one way and then they have had to shift back as things open up again. And then, like I think of it when you were talking about the distribution chain, I was thinking about the lumber prices, and like
Right.
lumber prices have been up in the past couple of months, and that's disrupted all sorts of pieces of the industry,
Right.
Even like building something in my backyard, but that has nothing to do with like the people building homes and the people that want their homes built. It's just disrupts all sorts of things.
Well, I just redid our deck, and I know what that costs. I mean, it's
It's
crazy.
expensive,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think that just that experience is so influential in being able to create those strategies and making those decisions. And yes, they're big money decisions, but that's a really useful experience to have, particularly on the strategic advisor board. But
Well, I think when you're out there and part of leadership, when you're putting teams together, and you want to make sure that you're teaching them to be self-reliant. When I say self-reliant, it's not about not asking for help, because I think one of the greatest attributes of working in an industry like this, or any industry, is being a part of a team, right? Because sometimes when somebody thinks about being self-reliant, they don't need no help. But self-reliance, what it does teach you is be resourceful. And so in doing that, or learning to be self-reliant, it teaches you to be able to look at business in a different perspective in order to get the job done. So instead of asking for help all the time, it's not bad to ask for help all the time, or ask for help, as long as you learn what you're asking for, right? And so when you are teaching someone to be self-sufficient or self-reliant, you want to make sure that you can rely on them, right? Especially if you put them in a position of authority. And so by teaching them to be self-reliant, they're going to be resourceful when you ask upon them to get a job done. Because the last thing you want to do is having them asking you how to get the job done, or if you taught them how to what the process is, or how to get a certain job completed. Or for example, if you're going to put in new technology, right? If you task somebody and say, I want to pivot this part of the business and I need this new technology, okay, they better understand the process and what the resources are in order to get that job done, right? So that means, all right, what type of technology do I need in order to pivot this business model? Okay, the type of industry we are in. All right, go seek out several options, of technology in order to take in a product, for payment. And then you have to look at IT. You have to look at, the software, how it's written, and and you have to make sure the back office is working properly. So all that is part of of teaching somebody uh, to be empowered
Mhm.
and self-reliant, but also resourceful and to get the job done. I hope that made sense. But
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's like it, I just think of like the strategies that we put together on the
right,
board, and this, it's not the difference, or the discussions that we've had about the difference between strategy and coaching, and and I'm in the education space too, so I'm very much I'm my approach is much more coaching and much more hands-on than the strategy piece. But the strategy piece is like, these are the things that you could do, or these are the things that you should do
right,
to create these changes and to make this difference in your business.
right,
But you've got to figure out the method of how to do that, because you know your own business. And
right,
so I think that's a really, I've just become more and more of I mean, this is how I work with clients too. It's like very strategy, but then let's figure out a strategy that's unique to your business and to your needs. I think, and
right.
it's different every time.
Yeah.
So
Yep. I mean, and as you grow, as your company grows, you have to be a great delegator because you
yep,
can't grow, you can't do it yourself, right?
right. We have to understand that we
And
that we might be solo entrepreneur in the beginning, but there are some things that we probably shouldn't do. That focus
right,
on focus on what you're
yeah.
what
I,
you're
and that's when you surround people that are better than you. That's what I mean. You know what? I understand every aspect of my industry, but there's people who do a lot better than I do.
sure.
So I have to learn. One of my strengths is knowing the right people in the right places, right? Delegate, make sure that gets done. Um, so yeah, it's uh,
I think that's a good time to talk about, or a good transition piece into the strategic advisor board,
yeah,
because there's 10 of us and there's such a diversity of experience there, and so much experience and so much authority in that room, that I think that's a very powerful place for me to be, and to grow by hearing the conversations and being a part of that thing, but then also providing my own experience. So can you talk a little bit about the strategic advisor board and how that has kind of changed your ideas and how you want to move forward?
I tell you, it, I love everything about it. Let me just say, I think taking a word out of your vocabulary is very powerful, um, and uh, uh, and I agree. There's a lot of talented people on there, much more talented than me. So I just, including yourself, I tell you, it's you know, I've learned a lot just by listening, right? And uh, I think Jason being the leader of the group there, he's he does an excellent job leading the helm there, and very knowledgeable about the business, and I think that it's it's given me a different perspective on helping businesses, you know, and how we go about uh, putting strategy together to make sure that those businesses have the right amount of knowledge and creativity to get them to their goals as quickly as possible. And I think that we work in as a group. We've in a short period of time. I mean, we've learned to feed off each other, and more so than others. But it's an excellent community of 10 that really offers a lot, and I couldn't be much prouder to be a part of it. So
I feel the same way. It's so fun to be a part of, and it's so dynamic, and I love all the different experiences and the
mm.
Discord, and I know there's just more of it to come. So it's an exciting place to be.
And my facial expressions really shows it all. So,
Really, it does. You're so expressive.
I know, right?
Well, Michael, I wanted to ask you about your advice to some entrepreneurs out there that might be thinking about starting their own business or starting consulting. Did you have anything you already said a few things about delegating is important and
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, you have to have a passion. You know, you got to have that passion because if not, it's just a job, right? You've bought yourself a job, and you want to make sure that. And the reason why you have to have the passion, because there's going to be a lot of ups, and there's going to be more downs than there are ups. And with that being said, it's really easy to let the 6 inches between your ears get clogged up, meaning with a bunch of BS. And you can believe everything that your mind is telling you, and you can talk yourself out of a $500,000, $1 million investment that can cost you, or you can buckle up your bootstraps and find the type of resources that are needed in to make sure that they get you where you want to
sure.
want to go. But it takes it takes a strong mind, if you will, to get past all the downfalls. Um, uh, you got to have the tenacity. You can't
Absolutely.
give up, and you got to make sure that you do your homework, and just remember this: failure is going to happen, no matter what. And you know what? And failure is a learning experience, and that every time you fail, and knowing that you're going to, you know, have issues with uh, whatever your business will take you, um, that's half the battle, knowing that up front.
Absolutely.
So I don't, I don't know if that's, worth anything, but it's,
That's great.
your mind will, if you don't have a strong mind to get you through opening up I don't care what size the business is. It could be, $100,000 or, $10 million, investment. The situational anxiety is going to be there.
Sure.
So,
I think that's great advice, and it's also just something to remember that I mean, being an entrepreneur develops some thick skin, right? Because you
right.
do have to adjust and move and change, and you are going to fail. And then something comes in, and it like the pandemic happens, and that makes you forced to change everything else. So I think that's really important to remember. So I think that's good advice to give. I do have one. I lied. I have one more question for you before I wrap things up and let you get back to work. But I was just curious about if you miss cooking and what you miss cooking the most.
What do you mean? I cook every night for my wife.
I love cooking. I was
Yeah.
just wondering if you missed any part of cooking in
Oh,
like a
in a
restaurant.
business setting or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's good to get back there and you know, I mean, there's a part of me that misses that a lot.
yeah.
What do I miss about cooking, or what was the second question?
I was just wondering if you missed a part of it or missed cooking a certain thing.
I miss the um, gosh, all the every aspect of everything that comes together. I think the biggest part is we have a saying in the industry: you're only as good as your last meal. So every meal must be on point, right?
Right.
So we because that last meal could be a detriment to your brand, right? So
Sure.
you want to make sure that customer's happy, and if you make that customer happy, that's the biggest joy that you get out of it. So but no matter what you're creating, it could be a simple dessert or an entree or whatever it might be. So there's many things that I love about it. Um, but yeah, there's a part of me. I mean, I enjoy that wants to. A lot of times I say, well, if I was retired and I was 70 years old, would I open up a small cafe like a bistro with a barista in it and do I don't know, whatever, so, and be a part of that, just to have the involvement of
Yeah.
of the customers and what have you, so, but anyways.
That's fun. Well, I think there's a book in there, honestly. There about the similarities that you're talking about.
Do I know someone who writes books?
Yes. No, that's so fun. I love cooking too. I was a barista for a lot of years, and so it's fun to be creative, and it's very fast, very moves all the time, and I miss that piece of it. And that's something that
well, that's how my mind works. It's, shotgun, so that's my problem with my recall.
You have too many things going on.
Too many things going on.
Well, Michael, this was a great interview. I'm so glad I got to get to know more about you and your business and the inspiration behind your consulting. And it just helps to hear stories like that and advice from such experience to entrepreneurs out there that are thinking about taking the next step. So I very much appreciate you giving me your time today to be able to talk to me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to interview me, and it was a pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And everybody else, I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast, where we will find ways to help you make your business out of your expertise. So we'll see you next time. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Expertise Podcast, and hope you're inspired to think about how to further monetize the expertise and the processes that you have in your own business. See you next time.